Hey guys, welcome to the Lean to the Left podcast, where we explore the important social issues of our time. Yeah, with just a little lean to the left. Now, if you're a parent of preteen kids, have you experienced difficulties in helping your child cope with the special challenges that kids face at that age? I know I did when my kids were growing up. Today, our guest is Marcus Higgs, a life coach who specializes in communication strategies for preteen parents, and we'll get his perspective on the role that open communication and strong family relationships can play in shaping children's values, social awareness, and respect for diversity. Now, Marcus specializes in helping parents create an environment where preteens can develop critical thinking skills to analyze societal norms and inequalities in a healthy manner. Marcus is the founder of Certain Future Press, which is dedicated to creating strong connections within families and communities through character development. In his work, he supports parents of preteens, those 10 to 14 years old, so they can help their child during these natural identity breaking years. Hey, Marcus, thanks so much for joining us on the Lean to the Left podcast. I really do appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing about what you're up to.
Thank you for sharing your platform. And
Thank you. Now, tell us a little bit about your background, Marcus, and the work that you do with parents. You worked around the world as a missionary for 2 decades, right?
I worked around the world for 2 decades. The first 5 of them were as a missionary, straight way to South Korea after getting my journalism degree in
Okay.
Alabama.
All right.
And I like to say my worldview expanded,
All right.
and I didn't want to proselytize what I didn't believe in, but no animosity towards a church or anything. So I continued teaching. I went there as a missionary teacher. The reason I say this is because the understanding of higher forces and greater powers in regards to faith is
Yeah.
still a part of my work, I believe, but it's inviting and inclusive of whatever faith you want to practice. I'm a strong proponent of virtues and values, and I root that in actually, we'll get into the details of it, but I was in the
Okay.
missionary for 2 decades, yeah.
Okay.
But for the
All right.
first 5, yeah.
Okay. Now, you started this thing called Certain Future. What is it and how's it work?
Certain Future Press is where I publish my books. There's one behind me, Words of Being, Inspire Life Through Words of Being.
Okay.
And it's from a Jim Rohn quote: the only thing certain is change. But when that change happens, because I also taught English language arts, when that change happens, your character will meet it. And change is going to happen. That's the thing that's certain. But
Yeah.
there is uncertainty. There is, in stories, we say life happens and we give it meaning. But
Uh-huh.
all really a story is just change over time and that we give meaning. But if your character meets it, you'll start to reveal yourself. You get to know more about yourself and know thyself, and you'll understand the secrets of gods and men. Yeah.
All right. So, what is it that you do with Certain Future?
I work with parents of preteens as a life coach myself. So I
Yeah.
am a writer and I do love words. I love communication.
Okay.
With Certain Future, I am the founder, as you said,
Hmm.
and that's the company by which I also do my coaching, and specifically for communication at this particular age.
Okay. Through Certain Future, do you have clients, parents that are clients? Is that what it is?
Yes, it's the business operating name.
Yeah.
And right now I'm getting case studies. I used to be, as I said, a high school teacher,
Okay.
and then I also taught 5th grade. And then after that, I decided to come out of the classroom because go where you're appreciated, not where you're tolerated, and where you could add most value.
Hmm.
And I came out and I was a mentor for through another company that my friend had for mostly affluent families, and we
Hmm.
do one-to-one tutoring and so on. Now I'm in the Bahamas with my father, as I told you, my
Right.
aging father. So I'm taking care of him while also starting a life coaching business where I can be location independent. So
Okay.
I'm still bringing my skills of teaching, just changing the audience, and also in in a space where I feel there's need. When I used to have my parent teacher meetings, Mr. Rogers said, if you want to support the kids, you support the parents. And that's the work that I do now.
Okay. Got it. So, what's the show up framework and how does that help parents show up?
Sure. if I could frame it with the context of what the challenge is first.
Please
So
do.
the frame, yeah. So a kid is growing up and they're dependent. And it's 0 to 10. They're, I call it maternal energy, pulling them close, saying you're loved, you're secured, you're soothed, you're seen, and so on. Gabor Mate said in his book, Hold On to Your Child. But the natural order of things, and in the natural order of things, is that they have to be independent. So it's paternal energy pushing them away.
Hmm.
And it's saying you're safe, you're secure, you're seen, and I need you to learn how to do it by yourself. You can come back as you need support. And that's what creates a holistic human being, that tension. But the final state is when there's interdependence. I promise to take care of me to be in service to you, if you promise to take care of you to be in service to me. You have adult children, you mentioned, or not?
Do I what?
Have adult children?
I do. Very
Yeah.
adult, older than you.
All right. Very adult. I love that.
They don't
Eventually,
act like it, but they are.
you know what? I was speaking with some seventh graders the other day, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Are you children, or are you teenagers, or are you adults?" And we're trying to figure out, and they're like, "No matter how old you get, you'll still be a child." I was like, "Yeah, my mom told me that." My mom.
It's true. Yeah.
But in this stage, the reason I ask is because there's that stage where it's interdependence. Like
Hmm.
they're taking care of themselves, there's support there. It's in the transitions of our lives that we get to understand ourselves more. But this is the first, what I call identity breaking. Life continually asks you, who are you? To which you
Okay.
have to answer, I am. And it's in this stage where their expectations are formed or new expectations are formed and so on. And I call it a wall of ice, ICE. Identity breaking. C is collaborative mistrust because they don't know who to trust at this age.
All right.
Reason being, you told them the gospel, it was black and white, but then now they're getting other world views
Hmm.
and they're skeptical. Skepticism sets in around 10, 12, but then nuance comes in around 18, right? And then there's E, emotional management.
Wait a
And
minute. Go back. You said, what did you just say about skepticism sets in and then nuance sets in? What?
yeah, thank you.
Come on. Come on. Fill that in for me.
Let's get it.
Yeah.
Skepticism starts around 10 to 12. And where skepticism comes from is when your parents tell you something and you're like, that's not true. Or there's another worldview. Or you don't say this, but somebody said something else.
Yeah.
And you start to realize their perspectives. And there are all these other people who have all these different perspectives.
Hmm.
And that's why you have skepticism about
Okay.
what's going on here.
Yeah. So,
Nuance
yeah.
to understand that there are different perspectives that they can be telling their truth while still not while being incongruent happens later on, like 18.
Okay.
That's what I yeah,
Uh,
that clears it up.
Yeah. Okay. I got it.
And mind you, all these developmental age they shift. Some people they're still skeptical well into their young
How
adulthood.
about 80s?
Yes,
You're
yes.
looking at, all right, you're looking at 81 here, and I'm still skeptical as hell about all kinds of stuff.
But you gotta lean to the
I
left,
do.
right?
I lean to the left. Been leaning to the left for a
Oh,
long time.
oh man.
Yeah. And
So
you know what? When
uh-huh.
Trump got
What's up?
elected, I leaned even further to the left.
Well, that's because you were trying to balance it out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I
Oh
started
yeah.
this whole gig, this Lean to the Left podcast thing that I do in my blog site, because I got so tired of Trump yapping around about the media being the enemy of the people. I figured somebody had to say something. Anyway,
Let the people speak. Let the people
yeah,
speak.
exactly. Exactly. Anyway,
Uh,
I didn't want to do this all about Trump, though, so we won't do that. But
you're all right. It's
I
just
want to talk about your practice, what you do, and the value that it brings to parents. And also, it occurred to me as I was reading the material that you sent me, it occurred to me that a lot of parents, I would think, might react, oh, I can take care of this. I don't need somebody from the outside telling me how to talk to my kids. Is that right?
yeah. And when I say yeah, if you are not in alignment or you don't think you need it,
Yeah.
then yeah, I okay. I really do think you can manage your health by eating less food and then exercising. But then if you think you need a coach for it, then by all means, because we don't know what we don't know. And I can
That
tell
was
you
a
right
good
now,
explanation. It was.
If
It
you
was a
want to be
good,
rich,
yeah.
focus on earning more money and then living below your means.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Life is simple. That's not to say that it's easy. And we do need support because I can tell you right now too, parenting is not easy. That very
For
well.
sure.
And we are not meant to parent alone. And when you have more perspectives, that makes the load easier or
Yeah.
lighter rather.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So how do you go about getting your clients in? What's your
Sure.
strategy for that?
I've started this. I'm about 4 months in, and I need to have more presence on social media, LinkedIn specifically. But
Hmm.
I'm running some workshops over the summer. And in those workshops, I'm going to invite them on the back end while also posting to social media. I need more case studies. Yeah.
Hmm.
I used to do this as a mentor, and I
Hmm.
want to teach this to parents.
Hmm.
I still didn't get into this show up framework, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But the way I get clients, or I'm planning to get clients, is working specifically with two types of people, two types of parents. Those who understand the value of doing hard things.
Hmm.
So I am looking at Spartan parents, CrossFit parents, and so on, and those who know the value of being an independent thinker. So I'm looking
Okay.
at micro schools and home schools.
Okay.
I came out of the traditional education system because I want to amplify the message. So I'm looking where I have the most leverage, and I love the ideas and concepts of micro schools, and I see that as the future.
Are you a product of public schools,
No,
or did you go to
and
private schools, or what?
I went to a private school, but I went to school in the Bahamas. So I
Okay.
went to, first of all, a religious academy, which my father then took me out of, and I went to, I did go to a private school.
Okay.
Why
Okay.
do you ask? Just wondering.
Well, I just wondered because the other day I did a podcast interview with somebody, and we were talking about public school education and how there's an effort afoot to fund private schools and religious schools with public money at the expense of public schools.
Yeah, yeah,
And it was a topic that we got into, and it just, I don't know, I just wondered if where you were coming from on that standpoint.
yeah. I'll say like this, anybody who's making an effort for well-being, like life supports those who support life.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is we are trying to figure out how to support ourselves and support others. I think technology is going to come about where we can have a smaller teacher or guide to student ratio, and a lot of kids can do independent studies.
Hmm.
And one argument for there shouldn't be funds taken away from public school, or
Right.
education should be funded. Education itself should be funded.
Hmm.
Yet, if a parent wants to find the best funding for their kid, and if that means a smaller class size, or if their goals are aligned with other things they value, and
Right.
I'm not even speaking about religion. I'm speaking about STEM, or I'm speaking about being in inclusive spaces
Sure.
where if they have special needs or so on.
Mm.
Yeah, it's fuzzy in there, but I want a parent to, I want anybody to live the life that they want to live, as
Hmm.
long as it's not encroaching on the well-being of others. And you're right, and not that you said it, but too often we rob from public education to fund other things, and that's not right. I
Yeah,
want
there's
to
the
see us
other
all.
issue too of separation of church and state. If you keep funding, if you take funds away from public education, you put into religious schools, to me, that's crossing the line. Do you agree with that or no?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And I'm thinking about, yeah, this, and when I say it's nuanced, I'm thinking about, while I am not Orthodox
Uh-huh.
Jewish, like in New York and in different pick any religion, when
Sure.
they would take them out of school and then find public funding for that,
Mm.
if they pay taxes, it's blurry, eh? Because that money is allocated for them anyhow, and they're choosing to do it in a place which would help or further their education.
Okay. All right. Let's talk
Yeah.
a little bit about the show up framework and what that's all about.
The show up framework is, after your kid sets up this wall of ice, they do, I work with the parent to start with a strong identity. So how do you
Hmm.
melt this wall of ice? That's the question. Start with a strong identity. All
Okay.
behavior and all action comes from a place of identity.
All right.
And in that, we're teaching virtues and values. And virtues and values are our specific thing. Virtues are, have you ever heard of VIA, virtues in action, the 24 virtues that are with all humans?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. In short, what virtues are things that work towards a well-being individually or the well-being collectively.
Hmm.
And that's creativity, bravery, leadership, and so on. And these are with everybody. Everybody has all 24 of these. It's just that some are expressed more than others in each
Okay.
individual. Values are just what you think are important.
Okay.
For me, communication is important. For some people, maybe money is important. For other people, family is important.
Hmm.
We each have our virtues and our values. And if you instill this character into a kid at a young age, right now, the problem that they're having is identity, right?
All right.
Here's another problem I didn't get to mention. With this generation, they're forming their identity behind the screens, meaning they're finding who they are in the likes and causes that are happening in social media.
Hmm.
That said, when the screen closes, they're wondering, who am I? And if you don't know who you are, then you don't know where you're going.
That's true.
So start with a strong identity. H is hold space for collaboration. When kids are going through this stage and they're not living up to expectations of what they think it is, or what they
Hmm.
think society is expecting of them, or what their parents are expecting, they think, what's wrong with me?
Hmm.
And really, there's nothing wrong with you. This is just developmental, these are growing pains. Sha-na-na-na. In growing, the parent works with the kid to say, hey, active listening, invite them into the conversation. Then it's how do you have dialogue to start working on the problem together? And that's hold space for collaboration.
Okay.
So we go over strategies and frameworks for that. O is open up communication. Again, strategies and tactics for creating spaces where your kid can express themselves. It
Okay.
doesn't mean that you're always the point person. You might be creating a pod of parents. There are many different strategies.
Okay.
And then W is wonder and explore this world together. It's a project-based living or project-based learning. It means committing to something for a long term, maybe 6 months, to say, I'm going to actively work on this. For you, it could be your podcast or your business or something. And your child also works on something. It's from Angela Duckworth when she says, again, you're trying to teach grit of we stick with things over a long period of time. And it gives you a space to have conversation on something effortful and that's meaningful to you because you get to choose what project you work on.
Okay.
And when you SHOW, you start with a strong identity, hold space for collaboration, open up communication, and wonder and explore this world together.
Okay.
That's where you unveil your potential. UP.
Okay. All right. So that's all part of the counseling that you do with parents?
So for the first month, I give you access to the training and understanding of what the show up framework is.
Hmm.
And then for five months, we work on calls twice a month where you can check in and let me know how it's going. Ideally, in the end of these 6 months, you would know how to communicate better with your child. And then there's a year-long community, whereas there are updates and we can have it's not group coaching, but yeah, group calls and I can take your questions.
All right. This is all done remotely via Zoom or whatever. Is that right?
Yes, yes, sir. I don't work with people in person. I'm open to it, but yeah, this is all online.
Yeah, with you being in the Bahamas, it'd be a little difficult for you to be meeting with people in person in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where I live, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
flight ticket would be a bit much, but the cost
Yeah.
of Zoom
I
would
know
be
some people here who could use your help, I think.
hey, I'll pass you on the referral sheet.
They just got bratty kids, that's all.
You know what? I know people from North Carolina who were bratty kids themselves growing up.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
they could their parents could have used my help. Now, what I would say, it's how do you pass on your virtues and values without being preachy? And
Yeah,
one of the things you value, it sounds, and I'm assuming, you value not reciprocity, but relationships. And you don't like to be in a part of a relationship where it's stale.
exactly.
So one way in which you can share this Do you remember the story or the reason why you hold that value? As to why you don't like people who are only takers? Do you remember a story from your lived experience?
Hmm, I'm not sure. I just
Okay.
think that it's part of who I am. I'm constantly trying to help people out. That's one of the things I get myself into trouble because sometimes I tend to go overboard. Heroic, what's that all about?
Heroic is a community of, I was going to say heroes, but it's personal development
Okay.
with, first of all, personal accountability and then group accountability.
Hmm.
And what it is, the founder, Brian Johnson, not the Brian Johnson who takes the, who ta- excuse me, who takes the youth stuff. It's another Brian Johnson.
Okay.
He would read books and synthesize their wisdom or knowledge from ancient wisdom and then modern science of positive psychology. And with these notes, it's like I said, personal development, and there's an app whereas you can make note of your identity and who you are and how you want to live into the world. And then you do it collectively. There's collective accountability of
Okay.
just other people watching you. It's a wonderful community, quite
Okay.
honestly. I could tell you the truth. Yeah.
Okay. You talked a little bit about some of the special stresses that kids face, that preteen kids face, but in today's environment, are things getting tougher for kids these days? And if so, what causes that?
I will say every generation has its unique challenges. And the unique challenge of this time is having fractured attention or having shredded attention. And what I mean by that is, like I said, the kids who grew up on their screens, we notice an uptick in mental health and anxiety and so on in 2012. And that was when social media came around, the 2000s. That's kids were already grown, their brains had developed. Generation X, or sorry, millennials. And then Gen Z came by. And when they're getting these stories told to them, remember, we are the stories we tell ourselves. But when they see all these images on the news and on the screens and everything, and they're getting their values from what's behind the glass,
Hmm.
again, they don't know who they are when they're challenged by the inevitable stressors of life.
Hmm.
And life really is about stress management. There are
Yeah.
three stressors: the stress to maintain, that's just to live.
Hmm.
And then there's the stress that blindsides you, comes out of nowhere.
Hmm.
And then there's a stress for expansion.
Okay.
If I want to grow, I have to stress overload. But if we don't learn those techniques, if they're not taught to us and we don't have an identity, that's how we start waffing about.
Hmm.
And I think that's the unique challenge of this time. I'm not against technology. Technology just speeds up the flow of information.
Yeah.
My thing is giving the child empowering information from the inside out. That's what the etymology of parenting and teaching means. It means to bring forth.
Hmm.
So if you are the universe experiencing itself, if you are expanding, can we do it from the core and speak to that first so that it can be like a fountain, right? I think that's the unique challenge of this time. Or actually, that's a unique challenge always.
Yeah.
That's always how human
Yeah.
development has happened.
Yeah.
But just at this age, it's fractured attention. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have kids of your own, Marcus?
That have come out of my body, no.
Okay.
I've worked with kids for my whole life, my professional life. I have nieces and nephews. I have cousins that I dearly love.
Okay.
So yeah, I the work I do say I'm an advocate for kids, specifically teenagers, in that I'm also giving voice to the conversation that when I was growing up with my father, as the adult in the room, we set the tone, but I knew he could. We all live in the room for the biggest room in the world, the room for improvement. And my dad could have improved his communication. No physical abuse, but there's just stuff. It's just anyhow, yeah.
Yeah. Listen, I know what you're talking about. Okay. I do. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
My dad was a preacher, and
Hey.
there were special stresses growing up as a preacher's kid, I got to tell you.
Yeah, PK. Oh man.
Yeah. I might write a
I,
book about that sometime. I don't know. Although I'm running out of time. Things are, man. Okay. So, did we talk about social media enough and the impact that it's having on kids?
we can still talk about it, but
Well,
I
go.
think
Give
we
me,
did enough.
give me more. What do you think? What do you think about the impact of social media on kids today, and whether or not that's helping or hurting, or can it have a positive impact as opposed to a negative impact? What do you think?
It life happens and we give it meaning, so it can have a positive impact. But
Okay.
before I say anything on that, two things. First, I want parents to know that you have a head start. Like you are ahead of the game if you're laying the seeds before social media gets their hooks inside your child.
Yeah.
There's no persuasion without identification. And the
Hmm.
strongest thing your child identifies with right now is you. One of the first things, when I said start with a strong sense of identity, we talk about family values. What does our family, what's important to us, right? People like us do things like this. That's family culture. That's what culture is. Seth Godin. So if you're able to get that at an early stage, ahead of those people on YouTube, and this is a funny thing. When you're starting a YouTube channel, they set it up in a sense where it feels like peers or they feel very familiar and they feel like friends and the kid starts identifying with them. Oh man, so social media, mind you, and this is no shaming, no blaming, complaining to parents, but think about it. There's a room of highly paid people figuring out ways to hijack your attention. Like the cards are stacked against you. So you have to actively be intentional to instill virtues and values. And mind you, when I say this, I'm not speaking of any particular faith or any religion or anything. I think you can be an atheist and have virtues and values. You can be agnostic.
Sure.
Like to be human, you recognize other people. Yeah.
All right. So, what are the characteristics of the perfect parent that you would work with?
Perfect is a strong word. I would say a person who's willing to learn, has a growth mindset. You know what it is? There's this wonderful book. Even if you don't work with me, I'd highly recommend this book. It's called The Breakthrough Years by Ellen Galansky. It just came out. It would be a parent who sees the potential of the best in their child.
Okay.
And the reason I bring that up is because she did a 9-year-long study and she would ask parents, what do you think of when you think of the teenage brain?
Hmm.
And half of the words were disempowering or negative, saying immature, silly, and so on. But only 45% were saying anything of um, kids live into our expectations. Everybody moves towards our expectations. So if you expect great things from your kid, I would love to work with you.
Hmm.
And that said, I don't work with the child. I work with you keeping yourself together so that you can stay regulated as your kid's being dysregulated. Humor is a characteristic trait, but people who are cynical, I prefer not to work with them
Hmm.
because cynicism actually it's very scathing and it goes very deep. I say be mindful of the way in which you talk to children, for in time it becomes a way in which they talk with themselves. A person who's willing to learn and willing to do work of learning how to bring forth the best in their child. If you bring that willing spirit, then yeah, we can do the work.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add? You could talk a little bit about the book. I know you told me that you weren't really working on promoting it, but let's what's it about?
Let's inspire life through words of well-being.
Hmm.
So these, just like Marcus Aurelius, always keep meditations on hand. That's
Okay.
who I was named after. This is my personal book of poetry that I wrote for me, dedicated to my grade 12 students. Quite honestly, the work I'm doing of speaking of virtues and values,
Hmm.
as I get parents and we start talking about virtues and values, I
Hmm.
then want to shift into entrepreneurial skills for kids with virtues and values because having a life, having kids who can work on businesses of what they want to create from a holistic, wholesome place of connecting with others. That's what I envision. I know you said talk about my book. I'm putting out a good words out there,
Mhm.
in that these actually are personal words. These are my words, but the message is there. The message of well-being. Yeah. Uh,
Okay.
They say garbage in, garbage out. Also, good words out, good words in. If you put them back into the universe, they come back.
All right. Got anything else?
Yes.
What?
This book here,
What's that?
this is written by my fifth graders. It's called The Goodbye Book. When I was leaving, they made this book for me.
Okay.
And if you ever wanted to know why I do this, what informs of what I do, I want to be in the game long enough that they have all these stick figures of little Afro guys.
Okay.
I want to be in the game long enough that when they become parents, yeah, it could be generational. I could pass on the same ideas and concepts that I've shared with them.
Okay. Great. All right. Listen, Marcus, I really do appreciate you being with us and learned a lot. And I hope our listeners and viewers did as well. So thanks very much. Appreciate it.